The real joke here is that I don't even like crime fiction. I don't like crime and like my books, movies, TV show, especially if it's gang related, it's not really my cup of tea, but S.A. Cosby definitely proved me wrong. Let's get right into it. Hey y'all, welcome to or welcome back to my channel, Scotty Cherie Reads. Today we're going to be doing a solo book review of King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. This book was published, or its release date was in June last month. I'll put the date here. So it's been out for about a month. Got my hands on it from Book of the Month, which I love. And yeah, I'm excited to dive right into it. So this is my first in-depth book review on my channel, aside from a couple vlogs of independent books, but this is just my first sit-down video. So to give you a little background information of how I do this, I use the Cawpile method, which was created by G over at Book Roast. I'll have her stuff linked below. But basically you go through the different characters, which C stands for character, A stands for atmosphere, W is writing, P is plot, I is intrigue, L is logic/relationships, and E is enjoyment. And you rate those from 0 to 10, and then you average them out and you see what star rating you get. So I do that with all of my books, and that's how I determine my star ratings. I don't know if I've ever said that on my channel, but I like that method. So we're gonna go through each of the individual categories, and those are gonna be spoiler free, and then I'll give a big warning at the end and when we start to get into spoilers. So grab a drink and let's get right into it. Alrighty, so obviously the first thing we have to start with is a synopsis. So I did say this is a crime fiction thriller, mystery novel. However, I would say it's kind of a family saga story as well, because it heavily focuses on family dynamics. So our main character, Roman, is a super well-to-do wealth finance advisor that works for the bigwigs in Atlanta. And he gets a call from his sister, Nevaeh, unexpected, that their father got into a really bad accident and he's actually in a coma in the hospital. So obviously, Roman gets his stuff together and he goes back to his hometown of Jefferson Run, Virginia, so he can see his dad and so he can be there for his two younger siblings, Nevaeh, as I mentioned, and Dante. However, when he gets back to Virginia, Dante tells him, just him, not Nevaeh, it kind of just drops this big bomb that he is basically wrapped up in some major shit with the local gang, the Black Baron Boys, I think that's what they're called, and he owes them a bunch of money because he basically was smoking, getting high on his own supply, is what I like to say. And this book kind of follows how Roman tries to protect his brother at all costs and to see as far as he can go. However, that already sounds interesting, but there is a subplot in here where Dante, Nevaeh, and Roman's mother has actually been missing for the past 20 years. One day she just came from work, she works at a hospital, and then, she never returned home. Her car was found abandoned on the train tracks in town, and it's just been a big mystery since then. However, the lore in this town is that everyone thinks the father murdered the wife and then disposed of her body because their family actually owns the local crematorium that is in their local town. So yeah, that sounds so intriguing and enthralling, which is why I chose to pick this up. I guess it's not the only reason why I chose to pick it up, because I have read Razorblade Tears and All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby, and I like them both. So when this one came out, I knew that I was gonna read it, but I think that I picked it up as soon as I did because the synopsis was just so intriguing to me. Okay, so we're gonna go into the Cawpile different categories. So we're gonna start with the characters. And my rating, I gave that 8 out of 10. I think that all of the characters felt like real human beings, and I think that Cosby does a great job of making them feel like, people that you know. From Roman to Dante, Nevaeh, the family relationship and sibling order that is explained between their bond is very interesting. There are quite a few characters in him. There's a lot of characters that you get to know in terms of the gang, the Black Baron gang. We get to know about the father and the mother a little bit more. There's a love interest named Jealousy in here that I really liked. There's a character named Khalil who is like Rome's best friend, right hand man, and he's probably one of my favorite characters. He had a little bit of comic relief, and he was just a don't fuck around type of guy. Like, he just stood on business, and I really liked that. But yeah, I'm not gonna go through every single character, but I think just overall it was done pretty well. The only reason why I gave it an 8 out of 10 is because I felt like the characters weren't super likable, and it's intended to be that way, but I wish I would have liked them a little bit more to root for them a little harder. But that's it. It's like, yeah, they felt real, but just not likable. Next up, we have Atmosphere, and I gave this a 9 out of 10. Cosby, this is what he's known for. Like, all of his books feel like movies, and that's coming from someone who has like a really hard time visualizing things when I read. When I read a book, I need a lot of descriptors because I can kind of formulate and know what it is, but I don't visualize it and like see it as a movie in my head, if that makes sense. There's actually a term that I'll put here and a little information in the description box that I was made aware of through my therapist, and I've like found it online a little bit, and people are starting to talk about it a bit more. I can't think of what it's called, but I definitely have that. It's a spectrum, so I'm kind of like in the middle, or leaning more towards I don't vividly see an image in my head. But aside from that tangent, what I'm trying to say is that it's a 9 out of 10 because I was able to visualize a lot more than I normally am this town of Jefferson Run, Virginia. You feel like you were there. You can visualize everything. It's like he does it so well. Even in All the Sinners Bleed, like that was something that I noticed as well. And Razorblade Tears is that it does read like a movie script in a good way. Let's not say bad, because sometimes if you say that, people think the dialogue is just terrible, but in a good way, in terms of the atmosphere, it feels like you're literally watching a movie, or it feels like you're a fly on the wall watching these characters in real life. So fantastic job, Cosby. 9 out of 10 for that. Okay, on writing, another 8 out of 10. Cosby is great at his analogies. His analogies just speak to me and jump off of the page. Yeah, his writing is great. I also think his writing is very, very approachable and easy to jump into. Like, after reading the first paragraph of this book, like, I was locked in. And that takes so much skill to do, and Cosby does it for all of his books that I've read so far. He's great at it. I also think that a lot of the time with thrillers and horror, I'm gonna get a little bit of flack for this, but I feel like the writing is like quite a bit like elementary sometimes. And I don't think that that is the case with the word choice and sentence structure for Cosby. I don't think it's super hard to read, but it just doesn't feel as like cheap, I guess. Like it's a little more in depth and beautiful, but not difficult to understand. You know? I hope that that makes sense. I don't know. He invokes a lot of emotion from simple words and the way that he puts them together, and it's just beautiful. And I think that he does that. His writing is just really well done. So 8 out of 10 for his writing. Oh, I did want to say, in terms of writing, like I was kind of saying beforehand, how it feels like a movie, the dialogue didn't seem overly cheesy, and I think that that happens a lot in like thrillers especially, but it didn't feel cheesy at all. There were some corny moments, you know, that are just gonna be in there because there's some nerd stuff that's in this book, because Roman's pretty much a nerd, and like his love interest, they like nerd out on page together, which is pretty cute. And I know that can come across as a little corny, but I think it was overall done well. So yeah, 8 out of 10. On to the plot. And don't worry, I'm not going to do spoilers in this section. I'm just going to give my basic number and a quick reason why. And then if you want to wait until the spoiler-filled section at the end of the video, I'll go into more detail about the plot. So for the plot overall, I'll give it an 8 out of 10, another 8 out of 10. It was done really well. It was gripping. It made sense. I could predict some things that were happening, but not everything that happened. His use of foreshadowing was done very well. The only reason why I really knocked it down a couple points is because the ending just didn't wrap up as well as I would have liked. I feel like there were some threads that were still kind of loose at the end that I wanted a little bit more of. For example, Nevaeh's story, I just wanted more. I wanted to see what happened. I wanted to see a little bit more of her story. If you know, you know. If not, you know, you can watch the spoiler filled section and I'll get more into the nitty gritty of that. But to keep it spoiler free here, 8 out of 10, done really well. Yeah, just the ending was a little lackluster for me. Moving on to Intrigue. This is a 9 out of 10. Like I said, I was gripped from the first sentence, literally. I was gripped from the synopsis, that's why I picked it up. Yeah, intrigue was there. I also think because there's two stories you're going back and forth from, the mom disappearance story and then the gang related story, and kind of the story about the dad and what's going on with him too, which is all kind of tied in together. I was intrigued with both stories, and I think that's hard to do, to be just as invested in both things that are going on. Because a lot of the time it's like you'll be invested in one and you can kind of take or leave the other one until it converges at the end. But the whole time I was intrigued with all of it. So yeah, fantastic. 9 out of 10 for intrigue. All right, logic slash relationships, I gave a 7 out of 10. Not going to get into too much here. We'll talk more about that, pretty much a lot of that in the spoiler filled section. But I gave it a 7 because I feel like at the end, a couple characters, specifically Dante, like made some dumb decisions that, I mean, it kind of fit his character, but logically, some of it just didn't really make much sense. You got to suspend your disbelief on some of this stuff a little bit as well. But overall, I think that it worked out. I just, 7 out of 10, not bad. But like I said, we'll get into it a little bit more later on. All right, and the last one, E, enjoyment. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Honestly, I feel like it might even be a 9. I'm just going to say 8 because of the ending we'll talk about. But yeah, it was very, very enjoyable. I would recommend it for anyone. If you read that synopsis and you're like slightly intrigued by it, definitely pick it up. I read it in just 2 sittings, and the only reason why I didn't finish it in one is because I literally had to put it down to go to work. So adding all those up and dividing it by 7 to get the average, I got an 8.14 out of 10, which on that scale is a 4 stars. Okay, and to wrap up the spoiler-free section, I like to do a quick little pros and cons list to see, because every reader is different, to see if something calls out to you that you would like, or if you know that you wouldn't like it, then maybe stay away from it. So let's just get into some of the pros. So a big pro for me is the discussion of grief and how that affects each individual person in this book very differently. I'm a grief sucker. If there's grief in the books, I like sad books. That's a check for me, and Cosby does it very, very well. Another thing he does well is the play on the birth order between Roman, Nevaeh, and Dante. If you haven't looked up the significance and like research of the birth order of siblings and how that affects kind of their personality and where they fit into the family, it's really fascinating. And Cosby, you can tell, has done some research on this, and it shows, in the bonds and personalities between those three. And I really enjoyed it. As I said, I'm the oldest of 5 siblings, so sibling dynamics are close to home and very intriguing to me. And yeah, I could see some of these similarities even in my family, which is kind of funny. So yeah, love that. Another pro, I've said before, I could actually visualize the setting, which doesn't really happen to me, so that's huge kudos to him. I also really liked Roman as a character because S.A. Cosby makes him very masculine. He does some crazy stuff in this book, but yet he is still a nurturer. And I think that that's important to see in a Black main character, especially in a gang-related story, because that can kind of go south real fast in terms of the portrayal of Black men. But I think that Cosby did such a great job encompassing the whole of a Black man and how you can be this masculine person but still be a nurturer and, have your sensitive moments. And yeah, I think that Cosby did that insanely well. This book is also blackety black, black, black in the best way possible. So he reps the culture immaculately in this book. There were just so many things that I caught, and it just felt like home. Like it felt really comfortable, and I think that it's approachable to people who don't come or aren't familiar with the Black community very, very well at all. It's still approachable. You can still feel the culture in this book, and I love that. Cosby does that in all his books, but definitely in this one. Lastly, for the prose, I like that he talked about family secrets, because obviously all families have secrets, and some have bigger ones than others, but that's big in my understanding of genealogy. That's what I'll say, is that, once you start sending your stuff to Ancestry, there are some questions that come up sometimes in the Black community, and not saying that the genealogy questions play a role in this book. It's just an example of family secrets, and that everyone has them, and how it affects, the family in general, and how it can really tear a family apart, honestly. And I just have a couple of quick cons, which I've already kind of talked about. One was the wrap up at the end, needed more from that. And then just the fact that I wanted to like the characters just a little bit more, because all of them were kind of dumb and annoying. And I know that was the point, but I wish that I would have been rooting for them just a little bit more. But other than that, that's it. So yeah, like 2 cons out of all of that, and all of the pros and all of the cool themes and through lines that he has in this book is super cool. So yeah, definitely pick it up and read it in one sitting or over the weekend if you can. Okay, we are getting into spoilers. Spoilers. So if you haven't read this book yet, click off and then just come back when you have, and you can converse in the comments below. But leave now if you don't want to be spoiled of King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. All right, so I'm just going to kind of go through the plot and just little points that I want to kind of chat about. I'll talk about some quotes and things like that, but yeah, let me know if you agree, disagree on some of this section, but I'm gonna get right into it. I was intrigued from the first page. It's like he dreams of his mother when he talks about his mom, and he wakes up in bed with that dancer. I also was insanely captivated because it literally started in the first chapter or first couple pages about him with that dominatrix, Miss Delicate, I think her name is, which is funny. But I was like, okay, Cosby, like you could you could kind of tell that, he knows what he's talking about in terms of the BDSM world a bit. And that there is this thing with, not with everyone, but with very masculine men, and the trauma that he has from the disappearance of his mother, and, ultimately being the reason why the mom died, why he is in this, mama son role play situation, and, likes pain in his sex play and needs that before going and making serious decisions to clear his head. It all just makes so much sense, and Cosby did a great job of explaining that without hardcore writing it on page. I think he does write a little bit. I wrote it down. Give me 1 second. I want to read that paragraph where it kind of explains this dynamic. Okay, on page 126, it says, he wasn't ashamed of his particular needs and desires. He learned in therapy that sexual pathology can also be a coping mechanism. He got that. He felt guilty over his mother. That guilt informed the women he was attracted to, and how he felt a deep, abiding need to be punished for something that ultimately wasn't his fault. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it wasn't perverse. It was preference. Yeah, so it's like it explains that in here, but not like you were so dumb, It's just a couple sentences. And yeah, I liked that through line. I was not expecting that at all, especially in the first, couple pages where he's talking about Miss Delicate. Like, that was great from the start. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead, and we're going to go into the Getty and Cassidy scene in the crematory. So that was wild. Like, it happened pretty early in the book as well, but like hearing and like seeing Roman just, be like, well, this is just what I have to do because it's either them or us, just got me. And I was like, I hope I'm never in a situation like that. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, like that would be so hard. Like he literally just punched the hell out of this guy and just knocked him out. And then I don't understand why Roman thought that like he was dead. I'm like, like no, he's not dead. Of course, he was gonna wake up in there, and that's exactly what happened. Like I knew that was gonna happen, and I just like I didn't have to put the book down, but like that was just a gruesome scene. Like I was really like, I felt it when I was reading it, and I wasn't expecting. Oh, I expected there to be a twist at some point, but I didn't think Dante was gonna bash that dude's head in. Like that was that was pretty crazy. Like, I don't know. That it was kind of annoying though because I feel like I feel like Cosby didn't explain the relationship between Cassidy and Dante well enough to make Dante's decisions make sense. You know, from that moment on and even to the end where she came back, he was stupid and like didn't tell Rome even though he knows how dangerous this is. He knows that he needed to tell Roman the situation, he didn't, and then he ultimately just kind of sacrifices himself, and is shot to death. But I guess him sacrificing himself kind of makes sense. Like, I mean, there are some suicidal ideations and stuff in this book, and he actually, like, at one point had that knife, and looked kind of seemed like he was gonna do something until Roman walked in. Actually, speaking of that, that's one of my favorite quotes in here in that scene. Give me 1 second to find it. Okay, on page 198, this is after there was the scene that Dante had the knife and was kind of were in his head and thinking about him, cutting himself. And Rowan walks in and he drops the knife and, he acts like everything's normal. But it says, he looked at Roman. There's 1,000 ways to die, he thought, but sometimes all it takes is one thing to make you want to live. Like your brother remembering what you like on your pizza. Like when I read that, I mean, even now, it's like when I read that line, I was just like, oh my gosh, like you really don't know like how much you affect people's decisions and how they feel about themselves and like where someone's like mental health is. Like, it was just so cute for him to come in and like they haven't been together for a long time and he remembered that he liked everything and like pineapple on his pizza and for his brother in that moment to just be like, wow, like he remembers that from when I was a kid, like I do matter, like he does love me, like I am a person and there's a point to be here, was just one line but hit the feels. But yeah, okay, so getting back to the relationship between Cassidy and Dante, like the things that he was doing felt like they were like married and had a super great relationship, but really in the book it was just saying that like Cassidy was cheating because she was in a relationship with Getty, the guy who ultimately died, the one that was like burned alive in the oven. She was cheating with him and they were just like doing drugs together and stuff. So I don't know, it just didn't really make sense. I wish he would have made like talked about that relationship and made it make sense for why he was doing all of this like for this girl, like literally sacrificing his like family and safety of his family for Cassidy. Like I don't know, I didn't really like that too much, so I had to kind of suspend my disbelief in that element. But anyway, moving on. So let's talk about Nevaeh, because I liked Nevaeh's character a lot, even though at the end she was kind of dumb and like I mean, she acted impulsively, which I mean, I guess if I truly believed that my father killed my mother, and hid it this whole time, I don't know how I would feel. And I also think that it played a role that, it didn't know if he was gonna die or if he was just gonna stay like that. And like the amount of money it would have taken, like, I don't know. I guess it makes sense for why she, I think how did she kill him? I was like, I think that she injected him or gave him aspirin, which contradicted like another medicine or something. I need to go back and look at it, but obviously she was the one who did it and found out afterwards that he actually wasn't the person that killed the mom. Was pretty crazy. So that was what I was saying earlier, how after that reveal she just runs away and we don't know what else happened to her, and I didn't like that. I wanted to know and like see a little bit more of that afterwards. It was kind of like, oh, dad's dead, killed him, and then Roman's like, well, what the fuck, like that was not, he wasn't the one that did it, I did it, and it was like, oh shit, and she just left. Like I wish that we got more from that. But talking about the mother's disappearance, I knew Roman or Dante did it from the beginning. I wasn't sure which one, but I knew, since I don't know, I just knew that it was one of those two and that the father was covering it up. or that the father did it and the boys knew for some reason. Like I knew that someone in the family did it and they covered it up in that regard. But even though I knew that and foreshadowed that or guessed that, it didn't ruin the book for me. Like the reveal still was engaging. The one they did morning, afternoon, evening. However, I do have a question for y'all because I don't know if it's the book of the month print or if this isn't all of them, but I caught a big mess up that threw me off when I was reading the book because it says it goes between 2003 and 2004 when the mom died. So in my copy, sorry, I'm trying to find it. When they do the first flashback, it said June 6, 2003. Hold on, let me find it. Yeah. So on page 101, when they do the first flashback, it says June 6, 2003 up there. But then when we get all of the other flashbacks, hold on, let me find another one. They say June 6, 2004. So I think it happened in 2004. And I think that first chapter, it was just a mess up for 2003, or maybe it was 2004. I don't know. If you have a different copy, let me know in the comments below. Like if you noticed the same thing, if you didn't, if you go back and look at your book, because I felt like I was going crazy. Like I was flipping back and forth and I looked on Reddit and stuff and didn't really see much about it. I think I saw one person say it, that their copy had that mess up too. But yeah, it definitely threw me off when I was reading for a little bit. So that kind of sucked a little bit, but that's not really Cosby's fault. Okay, moving on from that. I wanted more from Torrance and Tranquil's death too. Like, I mean, it was cool that their gang members turned against them, but the way they made everybody else suffer, I was like, okay, they just got shot up. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, they did some gruesome shit to them. So that was just kind of obviously finite, but I thought that we would have gotten more on page about that, but not the end of the world. I mean, they got what they deserved. They're dead, right? Chauncey too. Yeah, I think Roman, like him kind of being the main guy now and trying to run it a little bit differently. Like, I wonder if there's going to be a sequel for this and see how greed, messes with him. Like, that would be interesting. I would read that. I say, Cosby, if you haven't thought about it, we should definitely do that. I haven't heard, but that would be cool to see, his fall, because it's inevitably going to happen if he stays in that world, It always does. I also really liked the romance between Jealousy and Roman. Even though it was a little insta-lovey, it happened pretty quickly. I think that the banter between them and the nerdiness, I don't think it's going to be for everyone, but it was definitely for me because I'm a nerd at heart. And, having this masculine black man, who doesn't really show that side, and to kind of be surprised, and like us being surprised that he even had that side when he met Jealousy was really cool to me. And the fact that like from the beginning, like their kink was the same kink and she just got it right away. Like that was hot and that was cute. However, her at the end, it seems like she took him back, even though I think that she would one, he lied straight up that he wasn't in this gang. He wasn't involved in it at all. And two, she probably knows that he's the one that killed, her two half brothers. But I mean, the pregnancy thing at the end, I don't know. I guess like it is a layup for another book. So we'll see, because I mean, she has a baby on the way and just found out her brothers died and is probably realizing that it was Rome's fault. So hopefully we get that sequel. I think that's pretty much what I want to talk about in terms of the plot, like some of my frustrations, things that I really enjoyed, but I have a couple quotes here that I want to read really quickly. So there's one in here that made me laugh, and when I talk about this book being blackety black black, just this one character, I don't know why it's so funny to me, but it was. And I think this is because my dad was a barber and I grew up like in the barbershop, and the black barbershop, like the banter that's in there is just crazy. And there's a character that's in here when he goes to the store, the Save You More, and he talks about, he meets Leslie, who's like the owner, has worked there for forever, but he's like old and kind of senile now. And he comes up to Rome and is like, they never did find your mama, did they? Bet your daddy killed her and spread her ashes in the river. It's just like, That's so raw. Like, some old people just do not give up. Like, they do not care at all. And they'll just say shit like that. And I was laughing because I was like, I know that person, or like the person that's a little strung out, that's coming in to get some help with the barbershop or whatever. And, everybody kind of like deals with them. But it's like, yeah, like that was just too much. I laughed out loud at that part. Just a couple more. I was saying how the family or sibling relationships in this book just really hit me. And I wanted to talk about, what page is it on? One sec. It's actually on page 68, so it's not too long after that last funny scene that I was talking about. But it says, Roman thought it was funny how the most random, insignificant things burrowed into your brain when it was about your family, especially when it was about your siblings. And that is so true. Like when he was talking about the part about the pizza and how he remembered, like just little things like that just stick because you grew up with them. They made you who you are, I love that. And then there's one more. All right, on page 87, it says, her stance was so similar to Dante's, Roman felt his throat knot up for a moment. They were all more alike in their unconscious movements and actions than most people outside the family would ever realize. The way they laughed, the way they leaned against a counter, the way they chewed their food. Last night, eating dinner, he noticed how they all sipped a drink before taking a bite of the casserole to help them swallow. Ancestry stretched marionette strings down through a generation of coupling, of sighs, of long winter days and champagne Saturday nights, to make them move with unpracticed synchronicity. Their family tree had deep roots that bond them all together in its grip. All right, I struggle a little bit, but you get it. Like Cosby's writing in terms of family and siblings, he just gets it. And it reminded me of my siblings. It made me a little sad, because I just came back from spending a month with them and it started to feel like normal, but I'm back to Phoenix now and just miss them. And I think that he hits those strings exactly. He does a great job of pulling those heartstrings. And the last thing, what I want to wrap this up with is the poor dad, Keith. I was so sad about that situation. I can't imagine him having to bury his wife and like keep it a secret, and for everyone in this town to say that, he was the one that did it. And I don't know how he kept going. I don't know how he kept going. I don't know how he didn't completely break. Then they like hinted at and said that he could probably hear the conversations that they were having when he was in a coma, which is like one of the scariest things to me. And then to know that his daughter killed him and he couldn't say anything, and even though he didn't, he was protecting the family, was wild. So R.I.P. Keith. I felt so bad for him. He deserved so much more. But that's all I really want to say for this review. Loved it. Can't wait to pick up the next essay, Cosby. If you've read it, let me know down below and let's chat about it because I need more people to talk about this book with. It was so good. If you like what you saw here, please subscribe. Leave a comment below like I said. Like it. Turn on the notification bell so you can see when I upload the next video. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, y'all.